Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Jacob Restituto, and today we're going to be breaking down how I made my song Perspective. A little bit about this song. The story behind my song Perspective is I could tell you the exact moment, the exact day. I was sitting on the couch. It was September 11th, 2023, and it was my first day back at work after I had injured my foot, requiring surgery where I severed the tendon in my foot. Whole long story, but I wasn't able to walk, and I was in crutches and still figuring out how to use crutches and everything. And I was sitting on the couch, and I started going through samples, trying to listen to music and find and spark inspiration of a song idea. And I heard this sample. And it really inspired this like creative. I was like, this is a really cool vibe. And I started layering a couple of drums here and there in it and just created like a sonicscape. And then I asked my wife, and I was like, what does this song sound like to you? She's like, you should write a song about like the perspective and how keeping a positive perspective makes all the difference because of my current situation. I was like, that's a great idea. So then over the next couple of days, I started writing early morning writing sessions, and this is where the idea of the song came from. So side note, this song, all the lyrics were written pretty much before like 7 a.m. every day. I still am, but was doing a lot of songwriting sessions that were like between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. And like just the early morning, nobody's awake, nobody can distract me. Nobody can even send me a text because they're not awake. So like, and the creative juices are really flowing. It's not easy to get. It's so easy to stay undistracted, if that makes sense. And so almost all these lyrics were written during that time frame. It was phenomenal. As a creative, know yourself, but like either I would recommend trying the extremes of the day. So if you're creative, try getting up really early and doing creativity first thing first, or really late at night. You know, I definitely don't function well late at night. I just get super distracted, like super like not inspired, but really in the morning works really well for me. So like give it a shot. All right, let's see what we got. It starts off with this simple guitar riff. Kind of just repeats over and over and over again. I've been really liking this Waves SSL G channel EQ and compressor like channel strip. I've been using it on everything. I really like this. It works really well on vocals and guitars, and you know, ironically, like I actually used a piano setting on this guitar just because, and then I tweaked it from there because I like the way that it sounded. This thing sounds so good. It's a model after the SSL analog console, and I've been using it on vocals, and it's just all around a really great sounding plugin. So I have this on pretty much everything. Look over here on the left hand side, we have on every track. I also like the fact that it's not a parametric EQ, meaning like you don't have as much control. You're not seeing all the things you would see in a parametric EQ, which gives you a little too much control, I think. It's great and I love it, but sometimes creatively, you're like tweaking there, like trying to find the right exact sound. It's like, okay, there's too many options. You know, it's like when you go into the supermarket and there's so many options of what you're trying to buy. Here, there's less options. You can only do so much. It takes away the thinking because you can only spend so much time on it because you really can't tweak that much, which I really like. It helps you focus more on the creativity than necessarily the analytics of it, if that makes sense. All right, so we have that. We have a whole bunch of layered guitars that I think I actually, if I remember correctly, I went in. I think I hit a bunch of things because I went in and recorded guitars once, and I was like, just not vibing with what we had. Like you can see all these muted guitars over here. Let's see what we just have. Just wasn't vibing right, and it was just kind of sounding like garbage. And so I had a general idea of what I liked for the guitar, and then I went again and re-recorded it and re-recorded some new riffs to kind of give that vibe. It starts off with just that electric, comes in then with some other guitars. We'll go over the guitar work first. We've picked electrics. We actually have a bunch of picked electrics. So these are thirds on the acoustic, and these are the electrics. You can actually see the key progression going that kind of like was continuous. I actually chopped up this loop right here so you can hear. Instead of it going like this, back up, it goes, repeats that. All the guitars in the first verse right here, which is actually the chorus. It's actually start to the chorus. Then we get to the verse, and we have these guitars. So a couple of picked strums, or picked chords, a couple of strums. We'll go through them individually. Now we have these. Again, so with this we have like the SSL. Like, just look at this actually. I'll show you an example of what the SSL does in one channel. So this is, I'm just taking, I have a parametric EQ just taking out the low end a little bit more, but on the SSL is where the main sound is coming from. So this is the dry sound with the parametric EQ on. Now how really kind of thins it out a little, brightens it up, brings it a little bit more forward, kind of similar over here if we listen to this one. That's with it, this is without it. Quieter and not as bright. Here's another one on the left hand side. Here's a big difference. Really brings it forward. If I were to take these 4 guitars and turn off the EQ totally on all of them, watch how different it sounds. Really brings it forward. So just in the mix, it just really brightens it up. So we have those guitars. We have these over here, which are picked acoustics, or with strummed. Okay, kind of simple. Last thing I talk about with the guitars is we have, you know, I showed you this section earlier in the course. Later on, we have a little bit more layers of electric. The thirds. And then we start to get some acoustic strumming, actually. This main sample that we had, and then this, introducing this one right here, this swells, was in the original, like, demo idea I had, this swell thing. Matching them together gave that vibe. And then last we have these acoustics over here, strumming acoustics. Again with the SSL on it. So let's take a listen to these acoustics without this SSL. So let me show you the left. I'll show you them both at the same time. So you got the SSL on both of these channels. Really, really, really been enjoying it. So like if we take a listen, turn them off, listen. Kind of thins them out, brings them a little bit more compressed, kind of tightens them a bit. Kind of just makes them more, like instead of the volumes being this big, the loud and quiet, it kind of brings them in. I used them a lot from compression and to thin them out. Just kind of, I want them more as a rhythmic instrument than like really fat instrument. You can hear it. Left and right. Almost like a shaker. All right, let's talk about this really cool instrument, which is the double bass. So I have been using a program called Musiversal. It's been really cool because it gets me connected with musicians around the world. I pay a monthly fee and I can book recording time with these artists. It's been phenomenal. So this, I recorded double bass, which is an upright bass, like a standard, like, you know, upright boom, 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 boom. And I'll show you just a couple different sections. And I want to tell you about the funny part about the mistake that actually got this sounding good. So sometimes mistakes are the best things that can happen in music. And here's a perfect example with this bass that I recorded. It's a double bass, an upright standing bass, and I just couldn't get it to sound right in this mix. So it just wasn't sitting right, it wasn't sounding right, until on accident, I accidentally put it on the wrong channel. I moved it somehow and it just accidentally went on the wrong channel, and it was on the channel that was really for a drum. And I was like, why does the bass sound so much better all of a sudden? And I realized the mistake. I was like, oh, let me put it back to where it was. And I was like, man, that drum channel sounded so much better on the bass than it did on the original bass mix that I had. And it just goes to show that, like, mess around, but like also don't judge your mistakes sometimes. Sometimes the mistake of like an accident of putting something in the wrong place is like, oh, that actually sounded really good. So like we get so hard on ourselves for making mistakes, and that's such a silly example, but like sometimes mistakes, when you play a wrong note on the guitar or when you play a wrong note on the piano or you mix something in a way that it shouldn't, it creates an opportunity. It's like, wow, that's actually really cool. So try new things and you never know. Sometimes the best results come from the biggest mistakes. So let's take a listen to how it sounds now. And this is it before, when I couldn't get it sounding right. See how much mud it's just a bit muddier and doesn't stand out as well as sit in the mix. You know, it's a little hard to tell when you just listen to it by itself, but in the mix, when you listen to it with all the other things, the mistake came out so much better. So let's talk about the cellos here. The cellos in my song Perspective right here are my own personal samples. And what I mean by that is I guess it's been 2 years, which is crazy. 2 years ago, I recorded a Valentine's Day song called "We Have Everything," and I recorded cellos for it. And I, sampled cellos, recorded a bunch of different takes. I'm not a cello player, but they came out pretty cool, and I've used them on that song. And then I've used them over and over and over and over and over again in so many different songs. I essentially created my own samples. I just really like how they sound. I really like the dynamics of them. So here I put them again in this song too. I, pitched them according to whatever song they're in, and this is what. They're a lot higher than they were in the original "We Have Everything," which that song is such a vibe. It's one of my favorites. It's such a great song. I'm biased, but continuing along, we have a little bit of a synth pad. I'll show you the synth pad. We also have a piano, I believe. Oh, this is the synth pad right here. Kind of just going along, taking about some of the EQ. Taking a little bit of the low end out. Now let's talk about the piano that we have. We have a piano riff going on. Giving a little bit of that old vintage tape sound through a tape recorder. Waves tape recorder. Kind of just gives it a bit of a degraded sound. Again, this EQ. So we have two different riffs though. One's doing more of a riff, one's doing more chords. This is more the chords now. And then we have it in the chorus as well. Wow, the timing's a little wonky on that. But in the mix, you don't hear it. Can you hear the piano? So many takes for the piano. I could not find the right idea for that piano sound. It just was not coming right. All right, a couple more things I want to talk about. Let's talk about the vocals. So the funniest thing happened when I was recording this vocal for this song, Perspective. I could not get it to sound right when I was actually trying to track the real vocals. Meaning I had written the song, kind of demoed it, and recorded these demo vocals at like 5 o'clock in the morning because I do a lot of creativity at really early in the morning. So I tracked them just to get a kind of vibe for the song so I can continue along in the production process. So then when I tried recording the proper versions, like vocal warmed up and like just really trying to get that sound, it was not coming out how I wanted it to. And there was something about that authentic vibe, this chill vibe, this vibe that I was kind of just throwing away singing kind of thing, that I could not replicate in the final version. So the versions that are on this song are the 5 a.m. versions of this production. I just couldn't get them to sound right in the newer one, so I stuck with the original demo. So this is the original demo. I'll show you. I know that I get crazy and I lose perspective. Now I just put a little pitch correction. I put my SSL on it. I put a little tape machine on it. A little real. Oh, so this is a cool plugin. This one splits it so it like doubles the track. So this is without it. I know that with it. I get crazy and I lose perspective. Really cool plugin. A little bit of EQ and a little bit of de-esser. So now we have this. I know that I get crazy and I lose perspective. I know that isn't right. Sounds a little wonky by itself, but to give that cool layer sound, so I'll mute the octave down. Now we have these two octave downs. I get crazy and I lose perspective. I know that isn't right. 5 a.m. vocals. That's pretty much it. Same thing with this this verse right here. So much easier to focus on the negative. I think this is a mix of 5 a.m. demos and new recordings. I think that there was a couple phrases that I did end up recording because they sounded fine. Now this is part of the original demo idea. This shaker was part of the original sound. The original sound, if I remember correctly, was this. It was like a kick drum going. It was this shaker. It was this synth pad, and it was this guitar riff was the original sound. And it was like a kick. So imagine like if I'll just take the kick in this. It was like this. That was kind of like the vibe that I had for like the original demo of the song. Let's talk about drums. Again, I used the really, really cool program Musiversal for this, or platform, where I, again, am able to essentially hire musicians for one fee. It's incredible. Really look into it if you have a little bit of discretionary budget for it. Like, it's so much cheaper than hiring musicians individually. So what I did is he tracked the drums, and I gave a little bit of like compression through this Need console. So if I turn this off, actually, kind of really brings it forward. There's a couple things in here, the snare, the tom, and the kick, that are actually triggered. So I'll mute them all right now. This is the original sound. And then there are triggers where, like, every time the real snare hits, it's also triggering a layer of a new sound as well to kind of fathom us. This is the original sound. Really hear the kick there. And the snare. That's it. I went in and, you know, kind of made them all like kind of sound. This is without the SSL, for example. Like, really punches it. You know, like looking at the snare. Kind of giving that sound. So, I'm a big fan of the SSL, big fan of the drumming. But that's it. That's the track, Perspective. Hope you enjoy that. Hope you learned something new. Hope you got a little insight into my creative process. Thank you so much for watching. Go stream a song.